In this week's episode of the LA Business Podcast, our guest, Kim Estep, has been a successful female executive across many different male dominated industries, including commercial finance. And we talk about her journey to create a new female focused resource so women can build businesses, market them, grow them, and provide mentorship. Let's jump right into this week's episode of the LA Business Podcast. Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Kim Estep, founder of Women Nation, a soon-to-be-released podcast. Kim has spent 22 years in the commercial mortgage industry, and we are really excited to have Kim on the show today because there's a lot of information you can share with us about thriving and succeeding as a woman in a male-dominated industry. Welcome to the show. So tell us about Women Nation to start. When did you start that and what is it?
Hey, Robert, thank you so much for having me. It's like a lot of entrepreneurs, it's kind of a long story. Um, the company that I've been working in since 1998 is a company that's really focused on commercial finance and bond trading and interest rates and the economy. And as I raised my own daughters, I realized that I was losing a little bit of myself in the industry where, the majority of Wall Street is male, and the men I was talking to daily that were owners of these mortgage companies are typically male as well. And I started this side project kind of out of the blue in 2014, kind of in spare time when the phones weren't ringing, because one of my lender clients ended up at a conference that I hadn't been invited to, and I wanted to know why I wasn't like on the list or whatever. And so I Googled it, it didn't exist. Well, long story short, 2 months later, my associate and I decided to hack together a search engine for conferences and conventions
Mm.
just to see if it existed. And long story short, I spent 3 years trying to make that happen. And as you well know, like two-sided markets are just, crazy difficult to build. And I didn't know what I didn't know what I didn't know. And I kept the other mortgage finance business running while I was funding, the startup and everything. But
Mhm.
fortunately, that led to this idea to create Women Nation.
Mhm.
So Convention Nation, in essence, became Women Nation. And what was Women Nation? Well, my staff and I of Convention Nation had been traveling to tons of conferences, just learn about them and see how it works and how people ended up there. And these ladies that we met were so powerful and came from all sides of business, from marketing to strategy to finance to um, just being entrepreneurs in general. And they said, Kim, you have enough business sense and the financial sense and the economic sense. Why don't you go out and teach women how to be business owners? And I'm like, really? Like Women Nation? I guess, yeah, we could do that. Well, the failure of Convention Nation and the time I'd put in and everything, and then we all have these ups and downs and how much money's coming in every month. I'm a sole proprietor in the other business, and so when the income got a little skinny, I had to shut it all down. I couldn't do it. I couldn't support both businesses anymore.
Mhm.
And but it was good because it gave me some time to really think about what Women Nation should be and how I was going to go about doing it. So I know it's a long convoluted story, but long story short, it's 2022 now, and this is the year it's going to start as a podcast.
Okay.
And the fun part is we're going to do something I don't think anyone else has done before. We're creating these 6 female avatars that
Mm.
are inspired by real people, but they're characters.
Mhm.
And so we're going to take our audience through their journeys and introduce our listeners to what it's like to start a business or have started a business and then be affected by COVID or be affected by a divorce or be affected
Mhm.
by having kids or any one of a myriad of things that happens to ladies every day as they're trying to get to the next phase of growing their business, up to and beyond that, 100,000 to 1 million to $5 million level. Um, like the average small business in America, the average sole proprietor small business owner only makes $44,000 a year. It's a
Really?
remarkable number. It's a remarkable number, and only 28% of them are women.
Mm.
But 99.7% of all business in the United States is a small business.
Right. It's the single largest as a group
Yeah,
factor of employment in the United States.
exactly. So,
And what's a small
yeah,
business? How would you characterize a small business?
aha. So I actually did some research on this too, and it all depends on what industry you're in.
Okay.
Because if you're, let's say you're in, yeah, so NAICS, the National, oh, hold on a sec. What does NAICS stand for? Industry Standards, North American Industry Standard Classification System,
Okay.
something like that. So it's essentially it's Department of Commerce, it's the Labor Department that says you qualify as a small business because your income is this, your number of employees is this, blah
Right.
blah blah. But it's going to
Right.
be different. Like a small law firm might only have one or two lawyers. A large law firm might have 100. But if you're a home builder, for example, if you have 100 employees as a home builder, you might be much larger. Maybe
Really?
home building isn't the best thing, but you know what I mean. Like if you've got plumbers, or if you've got
Mhm.
100 plumbers in your business, then you're considered a large business. But if
Right,
you're
but
if
if
you're a
you
two plumber shop, you're a small business. So
and so the NAICS codes will tell you that. I can look that up for our industry.
I think so. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It starts there. And like I said, it's employees versus income.
So the employees and income that they look at. What's the economic model for Women Nation, or is that to be determined?
Still working on it.
Got it.
So as we launch with each episode and we introduce these ladies and their struggles, we're going to have coursework that's collateral that kind of goes with that, so that the
Mhm.
women that have a similar situation are going to be able to come in and download stuff. And we're going to
Mhm.
offer that for sale. So, it's going to be, 20, 30, $100 courses, depending on the amount of information that they're going to get.
Email addresses. That is probably the single most valuable thing you can collect right now,
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
which you already know.
Of
But
course.
it's yeah, yeah.
We got lots of those with Convention Nation. Yeah,
So
but,
what was the challenge you faced with, Convention Nation? Tell us like, what didn't you know about building a two-sided marketplace? I've never
oh
tried to build
my,
a two-sided marketplace. I've just heard, "Don't tread that way because it will kill your soul."
yeah, it will kill your soul, and having come from finance, I didn't know anything about, the internet or SEO or digital marketing or tags and, all of this stuff.
Mhm.
We scaled it to, I mean, we had 30,000 visitors a month, so it wasn't small. People were making use of the information that we were providing. The problem was is no one was willing to pay for it. So to try to go
Right,
head to head with somebody like Eventbrite or go to head with Google, and we couldn't figure out like that secret sauce in the middle that allowed us to help us make money on commissions for selling the tickets. Like we had a recommendation engine that was in place that looked
it
at,
has to be affiliates.
yeah, but even them without, I mean, we needed millions of views a month before they were gonna, buy in advertising on the site and stuff. And the
Right.
hardest part was the SEO part and not having duplicate content, because what happens is a conference or a convention will typically overwrite um, whatever their marketing shtick was for the prior year, and they just change the dates and they change the speakers and they change everything, so that every time we created a page for like we kept the old results. So like
Right.
HubSpot's inbound conference, for example, that was one of our highest we actually were listed in Google on the first page, right under inbound itself. And there were a couple times we outranked inbound because we had reviews.
Mhm.
So um here's a conference that draws, I don't know, 40, 50, 60,000 people every year.
Mhm.
That's a ginormous conference.
Sure.
But the so so we had the review piece, and we had the getting conference organizers to just list their conference with us. They were like, "Oh, do I have to do that again? Everyone's always
Another
asking
one?
me for that." It's they weren't incented to do, and that's the problem in the industry, is the conference organizer doesn't seem to have any incentive to sell more tickets. Isn't that crazy?
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about association conferences, okay? They live and die by their sponsors. They live and die by their, repeat
Right.
customers, and their goal is to have clout because of the topics that they discuss and make sure that they get PR for the policies that they enact while all these people are in person at the conference, doing stuff. So they have
Uh-huh.
status for all of that. But going back to my not being invited to this other conference that my lenders were in, it's as if because I'm not a direct piece of the link, okay? The Where I participate in the business is at the rate lock time, and it's at the interest rate setup for selling the loan before the loan becomes the bond.
Okay.
So I know it's corporate finance, or
A lot of
it's,
finance
it's
stuff.
commercial finance. But the point being, I'm essentially like a middleman that
Right.
I don't create the policy on the lender side, and I don't participate in the corporate investment banking side over here. So why would they invite me to a conference? Well, the answer is because I might sponsor it because my customers are all there, right?
Right,
I want to
duh.
know about these opportunities to go sell my businesses to other potential customers.
Right.
And that wasn't a factor in this conference that I didn't know about and didn't attend. So that
Hmm.
was the problem I was trying to solve, is like, how is someone like me going to find a conference that doesn't exist,
Did
or
you
that
go to a
does
lot
exist
of
that I don't know?
Did you go to a lot of, like, conferences that were unrelated to your business?
Yes. In fact, so the first part of the team that I worked with was a bunch of marketing people, obviously, because we were, I hired marketers so that I could create the website.
Right.
And in doing that, we decided to go to marketing conferences because marketers love to talk marketing, and marketers, and PR people, blah, 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 blah,
And
blah,
we love
they
to
all
tell
talk
ourselves
about
how
it.
smart we are.
That's right. So I paid a lot of money and learned a whole lot about, digital marketing and stuff.
Right.
And like I said, it worked. We got tons of visits to the site.
Right.
It's just there are millions of conferences every year.
Yeah.
And so, Google doesn't find them all, because how does Google know how to rank them, unless it's paid content.
You know,
Y you know, and
what I do to find I don't actually pay attention to this, but at one point, like 5 years ago, I was like, "I need to be a speaker to get more notoriety for my
Mhm,
business."
mhm,
And someone was like, "Go to Google Alerts and type in 'call for speakers.'" And so,
yep,
like, still 5 years later, I get alerts, like, every couple days about conferences are looking for speakers.
sure,
And I imagine that's a good way to find conferences, and submit to be a speaker. I've never actually done that,
yep.
but I imagine someone who wants to do that, that would be a good tactic for them to use.
It would,
So
although you don't at the same time, you don't know the quality of the actual conference itself. So you could end up somewhere where it's your expectations are much higher than what it turns out to be.
there was one conference I was invited to, and it seemed so shady, so incredibly shady. And the part that got me, it was in Vegas. I don't know the name of it, but all I know is that they invited me to win an award that I had to, like, pay for sponsorship or something, which I get it. If that's your shtick, that's your shtick. Like, that's the way you make money, is you you ultimately get people in a roundabout way to pay for their award. Dope. Like, there's value in all kinds of marketing, right? So I'm not hating on the game or the player, right? But
Right.
I was like looking at this conference, not a single company. I mean, there were a lot of companies. Not a single company, not a single person I recognized. And there are people like who I recognize in this business who should be on on the stage. Not a single human being. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing I ever did. I just didn't pay attention to it. But yeah, weird conferences.
Yep. So that it's a big problem, and it's tons of money, because the 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 entities that are really good at getting people to come back year after year, especially nonprofit associations,
Mhm.
they don't have the marketing expertise to know what other customers they could pull into their businesses. And
Right.
they're so busy day to day, and they're so short staffed, they don't have the ability to learn how to do it the way, someone in Silicon Valley is able to go get people to fly from all over the world to come to, a pitch contest, or, or a conference. So there's a real disconnect in that industry. But the industry is ginormous. I mean, globally, I can't remember the GDP numbers now. It's been a few years, but I mean, it's hundreds of billions of dollars.
Must be slaughtered now. I mean, I remember the date. It
Yeah.
was March 13th, 2020. I had for a full, like, 10, 11 months, had my flight and my hotels ready for South by Southwest
Hmm.
for 2020. And I was like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stay there the whole, like, 10 days or whatever. March 13th, 2020 got canceled. It was Friday the 13th.
Ugh,
$450 million of economic benefit to the city of Austin, Texas.
gone.
And
Yep.
that's when I knew, okay, this is like the real deal with
Yep.
the
This
pandemic.
is Yeah,
problematic.
so maybe, the fact that I didn't succeed in that business and it led me to Women Nation is exactly what needed to happen, knowing that, something like this was gonna like, no one could have seen this ahead of time, right? I mean, experts have been talking about a potential pandemic maybe a decade ago, but,
Yeah,
in terms of bioterrorism and, post 9/11, they were worried about that piece, but I don't
yeah.
think anyone thought it would just come out of the blue like this.
Um, did you so what happened with Convention Nation? Did you shut it down? Did you sell it?
Nope, just kaput.
Mm,
The code was old, the stuff just moves so fast, and it's so expensive to build that, so we built it all from scratch.
oof.
Today oh, yeah. I mean, it was all custom everything, and my team was fantastic, and Sean was just he was such a hard worker, but he was building it pretty much all himself,
Mhm.
and, yeah, so it's gone, but like I
Okay,
said, I learned a lot.
right. So you have Women Nation, and you have some I think you have some pretty lofty goals for it, right? Like, you're trying to make an impact among women who are starting businesses or who are business owners, and you want to give them a competitive advantage. I
Yeah,
think,
just
like,
get
tell
them
tell
off
us
the
about it.
fence. Yeah, get them off the fence. So women are really
Mhm,
good at joining multi-level marketing companies, right? They're really good at joining some pre-existing networked company because they have that flock of, support already helping them put it together. But the problem is
mhm,
all the work they're doing, more than half of what they're bringing in, if not more so, is going to somebody else. It's not staying with them. So it's a good
right.
place to start and to learn your skills, but it's not a great place to really be in charge of your own financial future.
Your
It's a nice
destiny.
stepping stone, right? Yeah, it's your destiny. And, obviously I follow economics because of my other business. Just so you know, like my customers are doing 2, 3, 4 billion dollars, that's with a B, of mortgage, origination volume per year. So I'm very in tuned with government policies and interest rates and what's coming out of the administration in terms of economic policy. And, I have to congratulate Biden on saying that he wants more women owned businesses getting um, classified as government contractors because he's putting more money to work to help fund those businesses. So, women and
Mm,
minority owned businesses. So, that's going to be a piece of Women Nation right now. I think the first step is first getting women off the fence to figure out what they can offer society that they can charge money for, and we're going to help them discover that. And then help them set up the business by walking them through the legal aspect, the financial aspect, just the basics of is it an LLC or a sub S or this or that. I mean, or and what state should I locate it in, and what insurance should I have? We're going to give them buckets of information at their fingertips so they can at least understand what the business concepts are.
yeah.
And then from there, like I said, we're going to stitch in these stories of these other women and how they're moving on their journey. So I'd like to get like this flywheel going of content and, um, again, the network effects of women finding other women that are doing something similar.
Yep.
Okay, so someone in New York is in fashion and pairing up with somebody in Puerto Rico that's doing fashion, pairing up with somebody in LA that's also doing fashion. Now we get the three of those ladies working together to talk about, you know, the ones that are just hatching the business versus the ones that are, making up to 250K a year versus and then the ones that are have succeeded and they've gone on and they're making 10 million a year, right? We want to put those ladies together and have that community where we're all speaking the same language.
That's a lot of I mean, there's a lot going on there. And what is there like is there a set of and I say it's a lot because it's like, there's the LLC creation, the sort of like dry business stuff that no one really you don't get into business to form an LLC, you get into business to do whatever you it's like
Right,
I never got into business because I want to like review invoicing once a week, that type of thing.
right.
Um, so there's like that dry stuff. There's connection, like there's entrepreneurship, there's the mentorship, there's the marketing element. Are these going to happen in phases, or is it going to roll out kind of like all at the same time?
We're still working on that. And
Right.
that's a really good question. But I think we can address each of it with, I mean, ultimately, it's going to come from whatever audience we gain from the podcast, right?
Mhm.
And so once we get the listeners, we know we're onto something by the time they're hearing the stories and they're listening and they want to come back for the next, because the episodes are going to be back to, so you need to listen to them in order
Right.
for the most part, and then come to the website and then see the collateral that's on the website. And then maybe we get our audience to self-identify and say, hey, I want to favorite, or I want to follow, Kathleen, or I want to follow Sophia, or I want to follow Olivia, or I want to follow
Mhm.
Janelle because she's doing something similar to what I want to do. One of our ladies is going to be a realtor who is in Chicago and is going after the luxury market in Chicago, but as a minority woman who's very well educated, she's finding that she's not taken very seriously by men, especially the male clientele that she's trying to sell to. So
Right.
our recommendation for her is to go help this other woman. Um, oh gosh, what's her name right now? I can't remember it off the top of my head, but she wants to get into short-term rentals. Okay, she
Mhm.
wants short-term rental ownership, like Airbnb ownership. So
Mhm.
by putting those two ladies together, we have one that wants to be a real estate investor and one that's a realtor. We put them
Mhm.
together and then see what happens between the two of them. So we're creating a story. We're creating a series where these women are going to interact with each other and learn from each other. And I just want the audience to come on the journey with us.
And what's interesting to me is that you're actually it's I don't know the nuances of how you build Convention Nation, but it almost seems like you're going the opposite way, which is you're going very you're basically testing the idea with the podcast, right? Podcasts are relatively low depending on production value and all that stuff. Certainly can be like NPR radio station and high
Yep.
production value, whatever. But
Yep. Yep.
versus building code and building a business and building a website, hiring marketing people and all that stuff, it's much lower cost. So you actually get to test whether or not there's demand for the content and ultimately the ideas you're putting out there.
I am
Very cool.
not going to go spend a gazillion dollars all over again chasing a dream that doesn't have a customer, So, no, I'm going to take it really, slow and steady this time, and I'm going to get it right. This is, if anything, if all that comes out of it is that we help women become certified women-owned businesses, they get on the GSA list so that they can be pitched for government jobs. I think that's a really quick way to break through a barrier to entry to entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
is if you can see what the schedule of needs is from the federal government and then help women create businesses that satisfy those needs, right?
Mhm.
I think there's the possibility there. And I think that the number of women-owned businesses participating as GSA contractors is minuscule, which is why $11 billion is being pushed. It's double the amount it was last year.
Mm.
The administration really wants to put money behind this.
Now, I also understand you're a race car driver.
Oh.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? That sounds very dangerous.
No, actually, I mean, knock on wood, I think, no, shoot, crossing the street in New York City is more dangerous, I think, than being on a racetrack. Um,
Legit.
no, for real, like, I've almost gotten, or just being in a cab in New York City,
Right.
and I live in Connecticut, so, I'm in New York quite a bit, but, no, so I love talking about that. So, I've always been I was really into horses when I was younger,
Mhm.
and, because of family dynamics, my younger sister made that her profession, so there was always kind of this competitive problem between her making it her profession and me having it as a hobby, and um, so I kind of backed off and got away from the horses, but then I needed a new hobby, and after college, like, I went to a women's college too. I went to Sweetbriar College, so,
Okay.
holla holla Sweetbriar. I went to Sweetbriar College in Virginia and had my horse down there with me and did that whole thing. Went out to Colorado after I graduated and taught myself how to ski. And
Mm.
I had roommates in Colorado that had been on the University of Colorado ski team. This was in the late 90s or mid 90s. And yeah, it was I don't know how I got from riding to skiing to racing cars, but um in 2004 we bought one of those nice little German sedans, right?
Mhm.
I can probably say it's a BMW, right?
I
But
think that's okay. You can mention brands.
okay.
Okay.
Well, having bought that car and never having had anything like, I had like a Honda before that. Before that, had a little Ford. But so my husband, who grew up in the 80s with big muscle cars that his big V8s that his brothers had, he always knew I was a lead foot, and so he's like, "Honey, like, you need to go take a dynamic driving class or of some kind." And we don't live very far from Lime Rock Park up here in Connecticut, where the Skip Barber School was. And so he signed me up for a BMW day at the track, which was essentially show up, drive your own car, get on the racetrack, go 100 miles an hour, like, totally fun. And it was like, I don't do drugs, but I can just imagine the high that people get from, an I had such a visceral reaction with the adrenaline and everything that once I was hooked forever.
Really?
And so, oh my god, so here we are, it's 2022. Um, One thing led to another, and I started doing so, like, pretty much anyone can show up at a well, you have to go online, obviously, and sign up for it, but you really
Mhm,
can just show up at a track and
mhm.
participate in a club day where you drive your car on the track, and SCCA racers or, other drivers will teach you if so there's BMW club, Audi club, Porsche club, VW club, there's vintage clubs, like, you can look these things up in your general area if you have a track near you, and yeah, people will teach you how to drive on the track in your own car. Obviously, that leads to other things, which is I got out of I bought a Mini Cooper, and then I bought a big bad M3, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up in a Porsche. And so the Porsche oh, this is a whole 'nother story. I broke it, so I bought it. Yeah, no, it was and I'm tall. I'm tall, I've got long legs, I'm, like, over 6 feet, so any car that didn't have a telescoping steering wheel, it wouldn't fit me well, right? Because I don't have like the back muscles that a guy has that kind of takes up so the seat position was just weird in the 911. So
Mhm.
I had joined the Lime Rock Club, which was like it's like a country club for drivers. You get so many days a year that, it's like a season pass to go drive on the track. And one of the other members let me drive his 911 and I made it 2 laps and I put it in the wall. So, yeah, you break it, you buy it. So that was Saturday. By Monday, I was at the bank and handed him a cashier's check so that it was now my car. So I put it back together,
Wow.
and um, one thing led to another, and then I was in Florida doing a driver's ed in Sebring, and that led me to want to actually physically race, like green flag to checkered flag, and
Wow.
so now I have this car, and this is my 2011 Cayman.
Okay.
Right? And this is the Gearhead Girls Racing car, and I've been campaigning her since 2011. Yeah,
Wow. That's super cool.
it is crazy cool. I'll be down there. I'll be down in Sebring February 3rd, 4th, and 5th for the Porsche Club Racing. Yep. I know,
So
you're like
yeah,
you're like,
it's
"Why?"
nuts. No, it sounds like fun. I just, it sounds dangerous. I bet you it's not as dangerous as I might imagine. So, like, where do you focus your time between do you still have your commercial finance business?
Yeah, that's the daily business, but fortunately, the deals come and there isn't enough volume to have to do it every day.
Really?
So
Okay.
that's something I can manage, on an as needed basis. And it's when you do something for 22 years, you can be very efficient in how you get it done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine
Yeah.
so. So the remainder of 2022, I mean, we're in January now recording this. What is your focus in terms of Women Nation? Create the podcast. Do you have any specific goals to achieve by the end of the year?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet. I think,
Got it.
I think by the end of this month, we'll have the first season recorded, done, and out there. And
Mhm.
then based on the feedback we get from that, we're going to build out the content for the website, as we're going, and then just see what our audience is looking for. And when we're going to respond to them, we're going to gain those listeners, gain those customers, and then go after some partnerships and go after, um, you know, uh, just doing something exactly like this, where we have other women on the show that have done some fantastic stuff and have nuggets of wisdom for other women that are coming up behind them to start businesses as well.
Very cool.
Yep.
Um, very good. Kim Estep, founder of Women Nation, a soon to be released podcast. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.